Welcome into this episode of Wear and Tear, a Bears postgame show. We get to talk about a win. I am joined by Ryan of Bear Over Beers fame. Ryan, how you doing?
Well, right on brand. I have my beer to celebrate a Bears dub today. So I'm doing pretty well, Mason. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's about time I had you on a show like this, and it's cool to. This is the first time we get to interact because we haven't really gotten to do so before. So this will be really fun.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Definitely a lot more fun than it could have been. I'll say that.
Yeah, that first half there was some ups, some downs, but a lot more downs for the most part. But yeah, they got to turn around. And we'll dive right into our diagnostic study, kind of just an overview of the game. So, how did you feel? Let's talk about that first half versus the second half.
Felt a lot more confident in the offense in the second half. I was looking forward to them coming out, hopefully just establishing the run game, forcing it to happen. And I felt like on that first drive, they kind of looked like they were going to do that, and they looked decent. And then they had that really brutal third down play, to get off the field right through of course, a screen pass out to the left side. And that didn't look so good. And then, the Rams were looking really good on offense. Stafford was looking really good. Bears get it back, 3 and out, penalties. I'm not feeling very good. At that point in the day, I was feeling like, you know, obviously it's going to look stupid now because Swift ended up having a really good game, but I wanted to see more Roshan Johnson early. Like, where's Roshan? Is just constantly DeAndre Swift early. I still, to be honest with you, I would have liked to have seen Roshan out there even more than he was. He got that key third down pickup late in the game, which was nice. But no, I was not feeling good in the first half. Also, the defense, they were giving up a lot of ground rushing yards, and that continued throughout the game. The rushing defense wasn't great. But the old, bend but don't break deal that our Chicago Bears have come to embody kind of held true throughout the game. And, I started to have more confidence in the offense in the second half for sure. That said, when Stafford got the ball back at the end of the game, I mean, Torrey Taylor had a great punt, but I was still nervous, and luckily we only had to watch one play before we got to the victory. So
Yeah, I mean, if you were watching live, they talked about a lot of how Stafford is kind of the boogeyman for the Bears, where he's had a lot of games against them where he has had those fourth quarter comebacks, and he's been able to really take advantage of an unfair kind of a one-sided rivalry for the most part, not quite as bad as maybe Aaron Rodgers is, but yeah, I was the exact same way. Yes, the Bears also might have gotten away with a little bit of a roughing the passer there at the end of the game, but how many times has that happened to the Bears, the Justin
yeah.
Fields era, and even a little bit of Caleb here? So I think it's time that we had it flipped the other way. But exactly like you said, it was a little rough early. First half, 0 for 4, the Bears were in terms of third down efficiency. The Rams were 4 for 7, 57%. The Bears had 97 total net yards, while the Rams were at 159. So early on, it definitely felt a little more one-sided. Here we go again. I mean, it was just, I think I tweeted out 3 different times, screen pass and then some bad result drink. And that was just, that's what it's been. I mean, we saw it shift a little bit in the second half, but it's felt like some of those screens that they did run built a little bit more on other plays versus it being, hey, we need the screen here to really move the ball, like it was more so in the first half.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, definitely the strategy worked a little better down the line. That's for sure.
And you did mention the whole, bend but don't break aspect of this defense. Same, I dinner in game tweeted that out where I felt like, yes, you can get away with that when you're scoring, whether it's field goal or hopefully turning into touchdowns. But early on, the Bears offense was not looking like it was going to be of that nature. I'm curious, what is your point of view just in general on this Bears defense, the whole bend but don't break cover 2 aspect that they tend to run, giving up, chunks of yards, but hopefully not too many, compared to, say, you look at Brian Flores in Minnesota, some of these other defenses where they're really trying to do more disguises and really diversifying some of those defensive coverages.
No, I would definitely like to see them be more aggressive. That's for sure. I mean, the zone coverage was getting a little frustrating to me because, I mean, Stafford was really picking them apart early. Like, he made it look super easy. They were going right down the field. That first scoring drive, what'd they go, like 90 yards or something? I'm just going off memory here, but I mean, they were really moving it. It seemed like easily. So I would like to see them with some more man coverage and definitely disguise blitzes. Don't see that so much. We haven't really seen that in, a long time. It feels like Fangio maybe when he was here, but Yeah, I mean, this has kind of been the MO for Bears football, regardless of the coaches. It seems like for a long time is they play a lot of zone. They're very conservative, and on both sides of the ball, we saw him being pretty conservative today. And I would have liked to see him be a little bit more aggressive on defense. I kind of understand though, when you got a guy like Stafford back there, you want to be careful with all of his experience and what a skilled passer he is. But yeah, I'm not gonna lie to you, I was frustrated early by it because it just seemed like zone, 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 easy passes. He's finding the open spots right across the middle. But yeah, I mean, once they got down to the red zone area, I mean, they were kicking a lot of field goals today, and luckily we had the one missed field goal too, which proved to be very valuable late in this game.
Oh, absolutely. And, just in terms of how this defense is set up, last year they were a great run defense. This year it seems like it's been more hit and miss, more miss as of late. I mean, Kyron Williams ran 94 yards, 4.9 yards a carry. There was one carry in particular I can think of near the end of the game there where he actually just got tripped up by his tight end. I mean, that could have been a big game. So, the fact that right now this run defense isn't exactly where you want it to be, and against some teams, you have an LA Rams team that their offensive line is banged up. You're not going against, their number one unit there. So, moving forward, is that a concern on your end that when you go up against, let's say, a Minnesota Vikings that have an Aaron Jones, you have a Josh Jacobs with the Packers? I'm looking down the road, of course, but, is this something that you feel like needs to get buttoned up?
Yeah, I mean, look, we're all Bears fans. We know what happens when it gets cold in Chicago. You got to be able to run the ball and you got to be able to defend against the run. And I mean, yeah, you look at that back half of the schedule and who we're going to be dealing with. They got to figure this out because it is abnormal to be a Bears fan, especially, I mean, you said it. I mean, a lot of the same personnel last year and they could shut down the run. And we have not seen that really at all this year through the first 4 games. You said 4.9 yards a carry today, and it could have been more. That's not going to be good enough. I do feel good with the team being 2-2. I feel like we're back in the mix, but we got to get that figured out down the stretch because we got a stretch of winnable games coming up here soon. Our next 3 to 4 games are all going to be games where the Bears could make the argument they should win or could win. And then you get to that back half of the schedule when it starts getting cold out, it's going to be really difficult. 2 games against the Vikings, 2 games against the Packers. You're really strong at running against the ball or running with the ball. And then of course, Detroit as well. So it's got to be a concern. And, with the D line seeming to improve in the pass rush, it's like we've improved there. We've taken a step back with the run defense. And I really hope they can get it figured out because I do feel like for everything that's been said about this team so far and, underwhelming on offense, but they have been gradually improving on offense with a defense like we have with the schedule, the way it lines up. I mean, I still don't think it's drinking the Kool-Aid to say that we should be right in this wild card mix down the stretch of the season.
Oh, absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more on that, especially if you can, as you're seeing, maybe the offense starting to click a little bit. I don't know what to think of Shane Waldron at this point in the play calling. It was just such a tale of two halves. But at least in terms of this game, in terms of that offense, you only had Caleb having to throw. It was like 22 targets. He was 17 on 22. I mean, if you had told me that DeAndre Swift would have 7 of those targets, I would have said, stay off the beer for the day. That's insane that you're saying that. But, you saw that Cole Kmet 3 catches, DJ Moore 3 catches, Keenan Allen 3, and Rome only 1. Was all that's a little less than I thought was necessarily going to happen in this game, especially again with a Rams defense that's also a little bit banged up. So what were your thoughts on a couple of those plays near the end of, I believe it was the second half? The one that really is emblazoned in my mind is the one where, Caleb threw to the end zone and it looks like DJ might have slowed down on his route. What were your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I mean, Caleb's thrown to a spot on the field and it felt like he put the ball right where it needed to be. DJ definitely kind of sandbagged the route a little bit. He slowed up, and if you're trying to reconstruct this in your mind, but if you imagine him running full speed that entire route, I gotta think that's a touchdown. I don't really fault Caleb for that, just some miscommunication between the two of them. To your point about Rome, yeah, I mean, coming off of that breakout game last week, I would have been stunned if you would have told me before the game he'd have just the 1 catch for 10 yards. He had some blocks. He had a good block, if I remember right, on the Swift run. where he scored the touchdown, but that was a 36-yard run or something like that. The
Yeah.
big run for the touchdown. But yeah, I mean, he really was not much of a factor otherwise, and that definitely surprised me. It's going to hurt my fantasy football team a little bit. I'll just tell you that. I thought Rome was going to have a big game today, so
Yeah.
that shocked me. But yeah, I mean, they just played it really safely. It felt like with the passing game, he didn't throw it down the field too much. The times that he did, mostly, he looked decent, Caleb. But yeah, I mean, just a lot of screens as usual. Just a lot of short passing. He had the good throw over the middle to Komet kind of later in the game on one of those scoring drives. It was actually the play before DeAndre Swift's long touchdown run, and that he looked good there. But yeah, it just seems like with DJ, he hasn't quite been on the same page. All the overthrows throughout the season with him. But this one, I don't fault Caleb on. I don't think it was an overthrow. I think it was just. I think DJ messed up the route a little bit, and maybe he wasn't expecting the ball. I don't know what really happened there. I have to watch it back. But it was good to see DJ get a touchdown after that, and that was a beautiful throw. I mean, Caleb was getting the pressure on both sides, hung in there, put it right where it was needed, right in the middle of the end zone, at the back of the end zone. Great pass there. So, I mean, good to see DJ get his first touchdown pass from Caleb, and it could have had two today. Could have had two.
Yeah, you're almost hoping, maybe even thinking that you just kind of need the one, just get that one mojo going between you and DJ, Caleb and DJ in particular, where, Caleb starts to trust DJ a little more. DJ maybe starts to not take a little off of his routes, that even if he is the third option potentially, just maybe he has that clear out route that he says, hey, Caleb can make it all the way across that progression and get to me. So I do need to be running at full speed and selling out for this run. So, but yeah, it was nice to see that finally happen. What wasn't nice to see happen was Tevin Jenkins going out of this game with a rib injury. Unsure what that's going to ultimately look like when it comes to those rib injuries, right? You're going to look at primarily one of two things, either a break or a sprain. Break, obviously, that's going to be something that needs to get set. It's super important if anyone's ever had even a sprained rib, but definitely a broken one, that expansion of the lungs and just breathing throughout, that's going to be a problem, especially when you have those pads on like you do and when you're playing offensive line. I will say, though, the run game got a little bit better when Tevin went out. Now, I'm not saying that was a Tevin Jenkins specific thing, but the Bears just happened to potentially find their groove with Pryor at left guard and Nate Davis, even though he had a really, really bad penalty right after he came in. Davis at right guard. Yeah, who'd have thunk it? But what were your thoughts on the offensive line as a whole, and what are your thoughts on Tevin Jenkins potentially being out for a little bit until we know exactly what that rib injury looks like?
Oh, Tevin's a guy he's definitely taken a step back this year, like a lot of the linemen have, unfortunately. But you want him out there. I mean, when you look at this group of linemen on the surface, I mean, he should be their best lineman. I mean, you would think, just pure talent and also just experience wise. Darnell is another guy who you'd have high hopes for, and he's also taken a step back this year. But I mean, I think with the run blocking, they looked better today for sure. I said on Bears Over Beers last week when we did the show that I just wanted to see Pryor get downfield and hammer somebody. Get this guy on the move. His technique's not really there with the pass blocking yet, and we saw that come up in this game again. But if you can get that guy who is so big, just laying some wood down the field, good things can happen. And we saw that on the touchdown run too. He had a key block on that long touchdown run for Swift. So I thought the run blocking was definitely improved today. Absolutely. No question about it. I mean, look, they got the ball down on the goal line and they were able to punch it in. You got Kramer in the backfield in that fullback role. Didn't really see that one coming today when Roshan got in the end zone for their first touchdown. So I thought the run blocking, they got a little creative with it, and then also just looked very improved. Pass blocking, still too much pressure on Caleb. Yeah, I mean, a couple of times they held up. There was one time where Caleb got so much time, he almost looked surprised. He was just kind of like standing back there flat-footed looking around, and I'd like to see that a hell of a lot more, Mason. Have him get that much time. But no, he's still getting hit way, way, way too much. The Fox commentators at half were talking about how he was holding the ball too long, and I was thinking like maybe on one play, but not most of the time. And we've all seen that narrative out there on social media and stuff about holding the ball. It's like he's not really holding the ball too long. He doesn't have much time to throw the ball. And that was unfortunately the case again today. You know, you had guys coming up behind him kind of untouched a couple of times. So that's still a major, major concern. I also don't understand, and this is one of my frustrations with Waldron again, how it never seems like he has hots to go to on the pressure situation. You got to go back and you got to watch the coaches film to really tell. But the couple of times where, you know, they would be like right on him, it doesn't seem like he has any good hot reads to even go to. Like he's waiting for things to develop down the field and then he gets hammered. I also don't like how they never seem to call slants, especially on short yard situations. It's another thing today. You know, in that first drive where they threw the screen pass on third down and got stopped, of course. It was like the very next drive where the Rams had a third down and they had two slants from the left side and Stafford like easily got it. And I'm like, why do the Bears never do this? Never. You'd think it'd be such an easy way to get that short yardage situation. And they always get too cute with it, I feel like. And so, I mean, that's going to help your pass blocking too. Just get the ball out of his hands, throw some quick slants here and there. It just seems like they don't do that nearly enough. But yeah, I mean, to circle back, the run blocking I thought was improved. Pass blocking, still pretty darn concerned about that.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, if you look going into this game, Caleb Williams had a time to throw of 2.76. I mean, you're right around. Josh Allen's at that number. Jared Goff's at 2.75. You know, Dak Prescott's at 2.8. CJ Stroud's at 2.87. So he's right in this middle for the most part of where that time to throw should be. And the same thing, exactly like you said about some of those shorter passes. I feel like it's blue moon when you see a design slant route, like you said, or I think I can specifically think of one of the sacks that was given up. Who is it? Oh, yes. Keenan Allen had a little bit of a quick out, and then you did see someone coming across the formation, but it was by that time Caleb was already getting sacked. Like you don't have someone leaking out of the backfield. You don't have that easy like a little dump out pass like you would if you are running empty if you don't have someone coming out. So there just aren't enough easy buttons in this offense. It almost feels like Shane Waldron's used to coming from what he was doing with Geno Smith in Seattle, where Geno was a veteran. He doesn't need as many of those easy buttons. This is Caleb's fourth game. So maybe let's ask him to do a little less and give him some of that easy stuff. But all right, we're going to take a quick break and we're going to dive into some of our categories for the day. All right, we got that dog in us. It's the greatest time of the year again. Football's back, and it's here to stay till February. Over 1 million fans across 33 states got in the game last year by making picks on Underdog. Signing up with Underdog is smooth and easy. I especially like using their mobile app as it makes making picks easy as hell. Something pretty cool is their vulture protection. Get your entry refunded and receive a promo if a vulture leads you to a loss. Define vulture as a rushing touchdown scored by a player not designated as a running back. I also love their variety that they have compared to other betting sites and apps, such as their 4-person Battle Royale draft. Just pick players for this week and profit. Making picks on Underdog is straightforward, and signing up is even easier. Just head over to Underdog's simple-to-use mobile app or UnderdogFantasy.com. Sign up with promo code CITY, C-I-T-Y, and Underdog will give you a free pick to use on your first cash pick'em entry, plus up to $1,000 in bonus cash when you deposit. That's Underdog Fantasy, promo code CITY to claim your new customer special of a free pick and your deposit offer. Must be 18 plus, 21 plus Massachusetts and Arizona, 19 plus Alabama, Nebraska, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org in Arizona. 1-800-NEXT-STEP, 1-800-639-8783, or text NEXT STEP to 53342 in New York. Call the 24/7 HOPE line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. I got to channel my inner auctioneer and read those faster. So we're now moving on to So As We Thought and Not. Hopefully you enjoy all the puns that I have in this. I can't help but make this ridiculously. So, just deal with it, right?
Well, you know, as a podcast host myself, when you sent me the show notes with that, I loved it. And yeah,
Yes.
nicely done. Nicely done.
So this is something that we expected to happen that did, and then something that we were a bit surprised by. What was something that you thought would happen that did?
I think them just willing the run game to happen. You know, they really got after it. I thought they'd try some new wrinkles like we talked about, which they did with some of the blocking schemes, especially down on the goal line. I mean, if you got to think, if you know, you come out of this game with DeAndre Swift or really any of the other guys averaging less than 2 yards per carry again, I mean, that seat's going to get even more warm for Shane Waldron. They had to make something happen there, and they did. You know, look, the blocking was better, but also, you know, you got Swift out into some space. He was able to use just his shiftiness and his running technique to make things happen. And I mean, that's something we've always known that he could do if he had a chance to do so. I mean, he had that run in week 1 where he hurdled the dude on the left sidelines,
Yeah.
you know, and he did the hurdle again today. I mean, he's an exciting player. He just hasn't had a lot of chances to show it off. But yeah, I mean, I felt like they would lean into it. They would make it happen somehow. And they certainly did today. They looked a lot better running the ball. I mean, right out of the gate, really, you know, they ran it decently on that first drive before it got stalled. And yeah, they were able to punch it in down on the goal line. They were able to pick up that big third down yardage run with Roschon late in the game. So I think the running game being improved is something that I thought would happen and did.
I thought it would get improved, but I didn't think it would be in the manner that it did. I thought they were just going to shift more to Roshan, you know, maybe more of a 50-50 split, even like a 60-40 towards Roshan, just because through the last couple of weeks, and really just the last week, because they weren't using Roshan or Khalil Herbert in the first couple of weeks, then Shane Waldron, I believe it was, came out and said that Khalil Herbert was their goal line back, which he wasn't today. That was Roshan on that handoff for the touchdown. But I really thought they would lean more that direction, and they just said, screw it, we're going to stick with Swift, and today it paid off.
Yeah,
For
no, that's a
me,
good point. I thought Roschon would be more involved than he was.
yeah, 100%. And my fantasy team was a little disappointed that wasn't the case. I thought that for the most part, the Bears O-line were going to continue to struggle in pass protection, and it did. They gave up 3 sacks today. It'll be curious to see ultimately what some of those pressure numbers were once that comes out more. But I mean, how many almost sacks did Verse have? I mean, there was 2 in a row at least, and then there might have been a couple other ones. I believe he might have also knocked the ball out of Caleb's hands at one point, if I recall correctly. They got saved by a couple penalties downfield. Now, don't get me wrong; those were in fact penalties downfield that led to Caleb holding the ball a bit longer, but as a Bears fan, I'm also not used to getting penalties like that. I feel like we usually on the wrong end of that. But that's something that was a problem today. It got better as the game wore on. I'll have to go back and look at the all 22 to see exactly what shifted a little bit, whether it was how the play calls that were being made or if it was just the blocking in general. But that was still a problem today. I don't even know that there's a way to fix this going forward. Your center is going to be undersized and whiff on a lot of blocks. I mean, Braxton was getting worked by Jared Verse today.
Yeah.
There's a lot of penalties on the offensive line. I mean, even Cole Kmet in a couple blocking situations had some penalties. So this is something that definitely concerns me moving forward. But just as expected, it was an issue.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That has not seemed to improve really at all. So yeah, to be expected.
I was surprised by the bounce back of Torrey Taylor. He been fine. I don't want to make it seem like he's been bad because he's been fine. But when you spend a 4th rounder on a punter, you definitely want a little more oomph. And actually, I'm wearing my Torrey Taylor jersey right now. Yay.
Nice.
And today, right, I mean, he did a very good job. He had an average of 55.4 yards per kick. He punted 5 times. He had a long of 66. He had another one that I believe was about 63. And he pinned at least 2, if not 3, inside the 10. That was he changed the field position today, especially in an area like Soldier Field that it's windy, it's funky to kick in. Maybe one of those punts might have been helped by the wind even, but at the end of the day, Torrey Taylor, I thought, did a great job, and I was surprised by that considering, it's just been fine up till now. So this is what I was expecting, and this is what I was hoping out of your 4th round pick overall this last year.
So that's funny you brought him up because I definitely wanted to talk about Torrey. Now, I can't say I was surprised by him because I'm located here in the state of Iowa, so I've watched a lot of Torrey Taylor over the last few years.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I was just waiting for the Torrey Taylor game to happen. And you could make the argument that this was the Tory Taylor game. I was going to bring this up later when you went to the stat of the game, but I'm just going to throw it in now because it relates to Tory Taylor. But our colleague Jacob Infante over at Windy City Gridiron, he put out the stats here a little bit ago on Twitter that all of 5 Tory Taylor's punts and how much the Bears winning percentage increased every time he punted the ball. And like his last 2 punts, it went up just as a result of his punt. 8%, 7% earlier in the game, like 2%, 1%. He had one where it was -3. But overall, Tory Taylor increased the Bears' net gain chance of win to 22.7% today. And you are also wearing his jersey, Mason. And I have got to say, I texted a buddy of mine today because I've lately been leaning against buying jerseys for current players because I always get burned on it. If you look at my last several player jerseys, it was like Brandon Marshall, Khalil Mack. I mean, not that they weren't good players, but they weren't around very long, right? Justin Fields, exactly a year ago, I bought his jersey. And I'm like, I think I'm only going to buy Legends jerseys. And my buddy today was like, I don't know, you might need to get a Tory Taylor jersey. That seems like a pretty safe one. Like he'll be on the team for quite a while. And he made a good point. And I see that you already have one. So you're ahead of the game on that.
I just felt like I absolutely had to do it. And like exactly like you said, I've been burned on all of my last couple handfuls of jerseys. And almost regardless of what Tory does, even if he's just average, he's going to be on this team. That's just how punters roll, or at least you'd hope so. Mm-hmm. And I mean, if today is any indication, he should be here for a long time.
Yeah, he was phenomenal in this game. So I would say the thing that surprised me was the lack of a downfield passing attack. I felt like the Rams were really susceptible to that just watching their game against the Niners last week. And I felt like with Caleb throwing for so many yards last week, I felt, and you're getting Keenan back in this game too. I felt like they were going to run the ball better and it would open up the passing game more so. I felt like they'd have some success down the field, but it really kind of felt like throughout this game that not that they took the ball out of Caleb's hands, but it felt like Waldron put him into situations where he didn't want to like totally let the handcuffs off. Like he kind of reined him in a little bit in this game, just real safe, short passes. And so that surprised me. I thought he was going to have a bigger game through the air. He ended up with, 157 yards passing, 6.8 average. So, I mean, that was down for what I was expecting. I felt like he'd hit some shots down the field today.
Oh, yeah, I was right there with you on that. I mean, this is still a fine game, right? 17 for 23, 73% completion, 73.9, really fantastic. That's what you want because he's been a little low, but I was in the exact same boat. I felt that whether it was because of last game or just how they particularly wanted to attack this one, it felt they semi-removed it from his hands. I mean, last game he threw 52 times. I mean, he was down to half of that. So I just want them to find a middle ground. It seems like there's a lot of massive adjustments. I mean, you go week 1 from Cole Kmet barely playing to playing, I think it was like 80% of the snaps in week 2. And there's just a lot of overcorrection. Like we can just we can titch it up every once in a while.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It was, his first game with over 100 passer rating today. So that's something. I mean,
there we go.
No turnovers help there too. He could have had 2 touchdowns, had 1, but still was good enough for a 106.6 passer rating. So moving on up in the world.
Moving on up. And on that note, we're going to talk, it's going to be a good day. This is just something positive that we're taking out of this game in particular. What is your thought on this?
I'll just go with the rushing attack again, not to sound like a broken record, but they looked better running the ball. We got to have more of that moving forward. It's the Chicago Bears. You got to be able to run in December, especially if we're going to be in this wild card mix down the line, which I want to talk before we end today about the upcoming schedule and do a little predicting, because I think that'll be fun to where this team could be in a few weeks. Not that this team looks perfect by any means, but look, we got the win. This was a game that I felt was very important for them to get the win. And the fact that the running game was so much improved versus the past few weeks, I think that's a huge positive in addition to Tory Taylor, as you mentioned. But I mean, DeAndre Swift averaged 5.8 yards a carry on 16 carries today. That is a huge win compared to where we were the last few weeks.
Yeah, I think for me, I was going to just go with the fact what you already highlighted it, but the lack of turnovers on Caleb's end. Now, he wasn't asked to throw it a lot, and he didn't throw it necessarily a lot downfield. This last week, there was a lot of funky narratives regarding the 3-0 Steelers with Justin Fields, regarding what Jaden Daniels did last Monday in terms of what he's been able to do. So, I felt I've had to be very defensive of Caleb on that thought. And what I felt was I take Jaden Daniels. I feel like he's had to basically do some like basic trigonometry and getting like a B+ on it, versus Caleb is in like, like full out calculus and on a college level, and he's doing and getting like a B- or even like a C+, depending on how you want to look at it. So I would rather right now him be pushed to make the hard decisions and really grow as a quarterback versus being overly babied, like I feel like maybe even Jamie Daniels might be done. But as a big part of that today, the fact that he had 0 turnovers, there was almost that strip sack, but there wasn't, so it doesn't matter. But the fact that he had no turnovers, I think is fantastic.
He didn't even really have any throws that were a close call, did he? Like off the top of my head?
Not that I can think of. I mean, everything was pretty much right where you'd want it. I mean, he had that beautiful throw to Cole Kmet over the middle that that wasn't in a tight window, but it was in a well-placed tight window.
Yeah, right over the linebacker's hands, and right down. Yeah, no, that was a great throw. Yeah, no, be curious next week if they open it up again for him. I wonder if the coaching staff was really feeling the pressure here on this week. Like, all right, 2-2 or 1-3, that's a huge difference. We got to get the win. We can't have any turnovers, and they kind of locked up the playbook a little bit. But next week in a game that you would think they would be favored in pretty mightily against Carolina. Hopefully they let him go down the field again. And I agree with you. I would rather see him not be babied and learn from those mistakes, be aggressive with the ball and see what he can do out there. And maybe next week that'll be the case. But if that was at all behind the reasoning this week of just the importance of the game, they saw him walking out of there with a win, I understand it, but let's open this thing up again next week.
Couldn't agree more. And speaking of next week, the Panthers are on the schedule, and the Bears are actually favored by 3.5 or as many as 4 points in some places. So that's nice. The Bears are favored. Nice. Concussed corner. This is something in the game that was so odd. The decision maker must have been concussed. Mine was on 1st and 25 after that failed screen where Braxton Jones also got a blindside block, so it wouldn't matter anyway. Doing a bunch of crazy motion to make the defense think you're going to pass on them, and then run a draw for a 5-yard gain. At that stage in the game, you hadn't done anything to make them think that you were going to try to do any kind of a shot downfield. So the defense isn't scared of you. They don't think you're going to try to make a 15, 20-yard bomb. So to do that, you called a bunch of runs, a bunch of screens. That goes back to what we had mentioned earlier, where Shane Waldron, everything felt very disjointed in the last couple of weeks, and even at the beginning of this game, where one thing didn't feed or blend off another, one play didn't stack on another. It just felt like, I would run this in Madden, and the defense is just going to react, right? Because they think I'm going to pass the ball deep, and so that to me made absolutely no sense. But it got cleaned up later, which was nice.
I think I would go with that. Was it 3rd and 5 on that last drive where if they would have got the first down, it would have been the end of the game. And they had Caleb kind of run that option to the left side, and it was like a designed run. And I understand why you're running the ball in that situation, keep the clock running and everything. But I'm also thinking, like, have they ever even considered him running bootlegs? Because, why would you not roll him out and actually have the option to throw? It didn't look like there was an option to throw the ball here at all. It was just he was running the whole way. And I would have rather roll out the other direction to his right side, have some receivers that he could possibly toss it to get the first down. I know that's aggressive, but I was thinking in my head, look, we're all Bears fans. How many times have we been through this? We give the other team the ball back with a minute left and they win the game. And I'm thinking Stafford's done this so many times. Here we go again. I'm getting all amped to come on the show with you, celebrate a victory. And then I'm like, oh my God, I can see it slipping away, right? So run a bootleg. He can run it perhaps for the first down and, go down inbounds, keep the clock running. But if a guy is wide open, then throw it. Otherwise, run. And I felt like there wasn't that option here. That was just strictly, if he wasn't going to hand it off inside. He was running the whole way. And I would have liked to seen another option there just to ensure you get the first down, which they didn't. And they had to punt it. Luckily, Torrey Taylor came through with a beautiful punt.
You saw the same thing to a degree last week when they were down in the red zone and they decided to do the Wildcat and then, the speed option heard around the world and all that jazz, where it just felt like they took it out of Caleb's hands. And I mean, yes, he made a decision today. He probably, and I would assume that he could have handed it off to DeAndre or pulled it like he did. But like you said, I would have much rather either as a boot out, if it's wide open, you make the pass, or you just slide, because you have Torrey Taylor, who was on his game today. And regardless of if you gain 3 yards and you got to punt it because they didn't go for it, they kicked it on fourth, or if you lose 2 yards because you just have to eat it and you still have to punt it, I'm comfortable with that. But at least you had the option to be aggressive and potentially get that first and ice the game.
Yeah, I just did not want to put the ball back in Stafford's hands. Now, that looks stupid now, given how the game ended. But look, he's done it many times throughout his career, led those game-winning drives. They pointed it out on the broadcast. I didn't want to see him get the ball back. I wanted that game over then and there.
Yeah, I could not agree more. Our next category, we hear femoral support. This is just an area we want to see worked on. What is yours?
Boy, I could point to a couple of things. Shane Waldron's play calling it improved a little bit, but it's still making me scratch my head a lot here and there. And then, just the pass blocking and the fact that we got another lineup potentially coming out here. The pass blocking, along with also not committing penalties. I mean, the amount of penalties in this game, it was horrendous early. At the end of the first quarter, the Bears had more penalty yards than offensive yards, 40-31, which is insane for a professional football franchise.
Oh, that's nuts.
And that's just coaching. I mean, it is just not being disciplined. We got to be on the same page. And a lot of that was the line, again. So we got to keep working on this offensive line.
Absolutely. I mean, like you just said, they ended up having 10 total penalties for 84 yards. And a lot of them were very timely penalties. They were at some really bad. There was one, they were 3rd and 2. And then Cole Kmet, unfortunately, kind of has this weird stutter step on the motion. And then Caleb gets sacked the next play because they could just send the house because now it's, 3rd and long.
Yeah.
Mine, I'm going to flip to the defensive side. I think I don't want to give the defense. The defense has done fantastic this year overall. I think they're a top 5 unit. But as you are moving forward, you are still going to have games you need to carry this team just because you do have a rookie quarterback and you have a middle school teacher as an offensive coordinator. Stafford was carving up the secondary. Now, a lot of that is just facing a late quarterback. I consider Stafford to be a top 5 quarterback right now. And that's a whole other story in terms of the lack of top quarterback play. But at the end of the day, he is a top 5 quarterback who didn't have all the weapons he normally would have. You're missing Puka Nacua, you're missing Cooper Kupp. Your offensive line is banged up. This would have been potentially a very different outcome if you had those people in this game. And, all of this has to be ramp up to later in the season, those divisional games. You can't expect to hold the rest of the NFC North to 18 points with the chunks they were giving up. You look at Tutu Atwell. I mean, he had a long of 25, a total of 82 yards. Whittington, there is a rookie who had 62 yards and, a long of 16. Robinson, who is fine. He's a fine receiver, but he shouldn't be 2 receptions for 37 yards, a long of 19. Some of this is just the nature of this defense that we talked about already, that soft zone. I don't love it. And I think I hate this defense. I really do. I love the players. I hate what they're being asked to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Couldn't agree more. It's not, definitely not something that gets you fired up watching. That's for sure. Because, I mean, they're just giving up these passes all the way down the field, and then they clamp down once they get down to the red zone or a little bit before. But yeah, it's not great. Not great. I think that we have the personnel to play more man, certainly, than what they're doing in the secondary right now. But at least it was enough to carry us to the win today.
Absolutely the case. We have one more break, and then we're in our kind of our 4th quarter where we push through and finish out this show. All right, we are back. What's important? Stat. This is a stat from the game that you felt was important. Mine is via Kevin Fishbane on Twitter, at Kevin Fishbane. Running back DeAndre Swift is the first Bears running back with 70 yards rushing, 70 yards receiving in a game since Jeremy Langford, last from the past, against these Rams. Well, I mean, it's the St. Louis Rams, technically, in 2015. Have been hypercritical of DeAndre Swift, hypercritical, and I want to own that. I was semi excited when he got signed, but it's been a disappointment. This game, for whatever reason, I don't know. He had Michael Jordan's secret stuff at halftime in particular. Things got flipped around. He looked honestly more elusive. He actually got north and south a bit more efficiently. I don't know if I keep looking at this, but I don't know if there's a shift in having Pryor on the left and Nate Davis on the right when he didn't have his penalties. That helped that at all, because he did have a little bit more of a scene that he was able to get up into. And then, of course, we've already seen the receiving aspect and what he was able to do. 72 yards total today. I got to give DeAndre Swift his flowers. I mean, he crushed it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I kind of spoiled mine earlier with the punting game, but I'll bring it up again one more time. Tory Taylor added 22% to the Bears winning percentage chances via ESPN with his punting today. He had 3 inside the 20, 55-yard average late in the game, pinning them deep within the 10-yard line. Again, talking about the defense and what they can do. They gave up a lot of yards through the air early, but when they were able to pin the Rams deep, and then they were trying to run out of those situations, they were able to clamp down in the run game, and then eventually with the passing, intercept Matt Stafford to end the game. I think Tory Taylor was critical to this win today. I think he really, really came through, showed why the Bears spent that 4th round pick on him, and why he was well worth the pick. I loved the pick when it happened. Maybe again, being biased, being a Hawkeyes fan and watching him the last few years, I loved it in the moment because I felt like just strategically, this was a guy who could come up big when we needed, the field position game. And that's what we saw today with Tory Taylor. So yeah, the Tory Taylor game, Mason.
Hey, stats so nice. They deserve to be said twice. I super love it. And it's also nice to have someone on the show who was pro that pick. I was very pro that pick. One of my co-hosts, Danny Meehan, is pretty negative on it. So it's nice to have someone on my side for once on that.
I just feel like, you said it earlier, this is a guy who's going to be on the team for a long time, probably a decade plus. And there's going to be lots of games where they lean on that leg for field position. And he's going to come through. He's one of the best ever, at least in college football, when it comes to playing the field position game. So I think it was a great coup to get this guy in the 4th round. I did not think it was too early. I was thrilled to see him get picked by the Navy and Orange.
Absolutely beautiful. Next, we have our Kombucha peak performance moment, our defining moment from the game. Kombucha is a premium performance-focused kombucha crafted specifically for athletes and active individuals. This revitalizing beverage blends the traditional benefits of kombucha with nutritional enhancements to support energy, hydration, and recovery. Better athletic performance, increased nutrient absorption, improved wellness, and improved cognitive stamina. Don't forget, there is a bear giveaway going on right now. There's a tweet floating around. I will retweet it right now. But if you follow that, like the tweet, follow me, and also go make any purchase at kombucha.com/beargutcheck. You will get entered into a chance to win one of 3 sets of prizes. Grand prize includes a Bears glass, a Bears tumbler, a cool hat, Bears jersey, keychain. Second place gets a bare bones shirt, another jersey. It's just things like that. It's just really cool stuff. Go out, like I said, buy some kombucha, help yourself, feel like a better athlete. Anyway, what was your peak performance defining moment from this game?
I'll go with the touchdown pass that Caleb threw to DJ Moore, because this was after they had missed that one at the end of the first half where Caleb seemed to throw it on a rope perfectly on the right sideline, but DJ didn't run the right speed on the route or whatever happened there. These guys have been, like we talked about earlier, they haven't been able to get on the same page throughout this season. There's been some overthrows to DJ. DJ's looked frustrated at times. And then, of course, all the pressure that Caleb's been under and being asked to hang back there and wait for routes to develop and still connect with his guys. And this was a great example of how he could hang tough. If you watch that replay, they are crashing down on him from both sides, and he hangs in the pocket and he throws that thing just a dime right down the middle, right into the back of the end zone to DJ, who makes the great catch. Hopefully the first of many for these two guys. But for me, that's the performance moment, just because we've been waiting to see that now for 4 weeks, and first touchdown pass to DJ Moore, and especially given what had happened earlier in the game, that they were able to connect here.
I think that's a really good one. I'm hoping that sometimes you just need something like that to create a little bit more spark. I already mentioned that earlier. Don't need to dive into it too much, but that could really be a good springboard moving forward. Mine I went with was in the second quarter, 6:51 left in the game. Matt Stafford is sacked, stripped by Montez Sweat. You have Kyler Gordon recover it, and then the Bears offense goes under center and on the goal line and uses center Doug Kramer as its fullback to help clear the way for Roshan Johnson. Between the fact that I've been calling, I need more Montez Sweat impact on the game. I've also wanted more Kyler Gordon impact on the game. And then on top of that, they went jumbo. I've been asking for jumbo for the last 2 weeks. And, I think Doug Kramer's fine, but what he is really good at is at least being big and getting in the way and creating a path, which he absolutely did. So more of that, please.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was huge just because of everything that's happened with this team failing on the goal line this season, and especially after last week, for them to punch that in pretty much right away, was huge. To get creative with the jumbo with Kramer back there and everything. And yeah, I was surprised it was Roshan. Now, when they said it was going to be Khalil Herbert as the goal line back, my first inclination when they said that this week was it should be Roshan.
Yep.
So when they sent Roshan out there, I was pleasantly surprised. But I placed a bet earlier in the day, a parlay, where I had Khalil Herbert with a touchdown. So secretly inside, I was like, no, what are you doing? You said it was going to be Herbert on the goal line. But, as far as wanting to win the game, like, I was kind of glad it was Roshan. I mean, Herbert didn't even get a carry in this game, which was stunning.
Yes. And I do think that there still needs to be a deeper dive on the personnel choices as a whole that tends to be sent out there. But today you can't argue with it too much.
Yeah, no. If anything, I want to see Roshan getting the ball more. I mean, he only had 7 carries, but that was a big one. The third down pickup that he got where he just ran with aggression and broke through and got that big third down. Big Roshan Johnson fan. And yeah, I can't disagree with that pick because I think it was critical for them to be able to just run it through and score there early in the game, just given the last 7 days.
All right. We got 2 categories left. Masseter, player of the game, aka or MVP. The masseter can close the teeth with a force of up to 55 pounds on the incisors and 200 pounds on the molars. Pretty dang good for such a tiny muscle. And also, I mean, imagine we couldn't be doing what we're doing right now, talking, probably eating some food during the game without it. So pretty important muscle that we have. Who was your MVP of this game?
Well, I've already talked a lot about Torrey Taylor, so I'm going to go to my secondary MVP, and I'm going to say DeAndre Swift. Just because, I mean, to be honest, outside of the hurdle in week 1, the guy's done pretty much nothing this year. And for him to, like you said it, the first time since 2015, you've had a guy with 70 rushing yards and 70 receiving yards in the same game for the Bears. He had a phenomenal game. It was really good to see him earn that paycheck today and run for almost 6 yards a carry to get into the end zone. Yeah, I'm going with DeAndre Swift.
I wanted so bad to say Torrey Taylor, but between my hate earlier combined with how well he played, I agree with Foster's covers here in the chat. DeAndre Swift is the MVP. 93 yards on the ground for an average of 5.8. We already talked about too with that receiving, 72 yards along of 27, and even with that long run that when the Rams could have gotten some momentum back, he broke that 36-yard touchdown run. It's got to be him. And to be able to do that with all the adversity that he is seeing, because, I mean, he is number one besides maybe Nate Davis, but since he's been benched, no one gets to talk to him about him quite as much. But besides that, number one main enemy of Bears Twitter at this point. So the fact that he was able to have the game he had today, I think there are some people going back and deleting some tweets that they don't want to necessarily be seen anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. Combing through their timelines today.
Yeah, I'm gonna own my. Hey, if he goes on and just crushes the rest of the year, I'm gonna say that my tweets calling him out obviously were what did it. I'll be the motivator.
Not a stretch at all. He's got a bunch of Twitter accounts where he's checking in with people. Yeah.
All those burners clearly just follows. This is the random Bears one that I run. Prognosis period. This is our final category. This is just a brief look ahead. Kind of what does this mean for next week and the rest of the season? So what does this win? What does this performance mean going forward?
I think it means a lot. Again, on Bears Over Beers Wednesday night, we talked about, was this a must win? And I didn't want to, be too over the top with it, but I really did feel like it was kind of a must win, because the difference between being 2-2 and 1-3 in this league is huge.
Oh,
I mean,
absolutely.
and when you look at the rest of the NFC in the standings right now and where things stand, especially after today, there's some of these teams who started off hot, everyone talking about, oh my God, look at the Saints. Guess what? They're 2-2 right now, just like the Bears. Green Bay, 2-2. Atlanta, 2-2. San Francisco, they got 2 losses already. Up and down the line. Dallas, 2 losses. I love where the Bears are at right now. And now that they were able to win this game, and you look at the schedule ahead, we got Carolina next week. We got Jacksonville, over in England. Then we get our bye week. Then we get Washington. Arizona. Arizona's going to be a tough game. It's at Arizona. Then we get New England. But I'm telling you, man, you look at those 5 games, there's no reason that the Bears couldn't win all of them. I'm sure they won't win all of them, but if they can win the majority of those, you're talking about a team that has a winning record going into that back half of the schedule where things get really, really tight. And I know when I sat down and I looked at the schedule before the season started, like we all did over at Windy City Gridiron, I'm pretty sure I had them at 2-2 after the first 4, and I predicted them to go 10-7 and to make the wild card. And I feel like we're in a good spot, just the way everything lines up, because being 2-2 now, if we can come out of the next 5 games with a winning record, and then we basically go 500 down the stretch, 10-7's right there. So I just hope that in the next 4 to 5 games, the offense can continue to grow. You said it. Defense is probably a top 5 unit, especially if they can get that run defense locked in. If we can build some momentum on the offensive side of the ball, I mean, we are right in it. 2-2 is a great place. Our 2 losses were non-conference losses. So when you get down into the tiebreak scenarios at the end of the season, we're sitting really pretty right now. So I don't want to be too rosy. This team does have issues, as we've talked about over the last hour or so. But to be 2-2 after, some of the problems we had early, to not have a conference loss yet, to now have a conference victory, to have this schedule lined up this way, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling really good about this team right now.
I'm right there with you. I mean, there's obviously still problems. I mean, at the end of the day, when you look at the NFC North in particular, I look at, Minnesota beat Green Bay today. They actually had a much bigger lead, but Green Bay came back after Jordan Love knocked some rust off. The Minnesota winning 31-29. I mean, those are still the coup de grace. That's the top right now of the NFC North. But that doesn't prohibit you from still improving as the year goes on, from still getting some of that mojo, some of that swagger, and building, from, like you said, collecting some divisional NFC wins here, which is entirely possible. And we've seen it before. I mean, even if you don't end up being even number 2 in your division, that you can send 3 teams ultimately from the same division to the playoffs. You mentioned those games. Like, I personally, just because I have a personal vendetta at this point against the Commanders and the hype that they're getting in terms of their rookie quarterback, that is my biggest circle at 20,000 times must win for me. But yeah, I mean, just even in your next 5, I mean, you can at least win 3 of those next 5, at least.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens there. Ultimately, I feel better about it after today and seeing how that offense adjusted. Still against a Rams team that beat the 49ers. You can say what you can't want to about their injuries and everything like that, but it is still, Sean McVay is still a genius. Matt Stafford is still a great quarterback. Your defense held them to 18 points, and your offense did enough to win. So I think you can definitely do that going forward against these remaining teams.
Yeah, no question about it. It's that's my biggest goal right now. And I agree with you on Washington. Would love to see them just destroy them like they did last year, just given all of the media narratives right now. There's no reason they shouldn't. Just based on how it went last year. We just played them last year. But it's going to be tighter this year, no question about it. But yeah, I think that's a game we can get to victory in Washington again. And yeah, hopefully we're building some serious momentum and you get this offense on the same page. And I don't want to pick the Bears to beat Green Bay until they finally do again. But I mean, yeah, Jordan Love, he didn't look great today. He ended up bouncing back. He had 3 picks, but then I think he threw 4 touchdowns, didn't he?
It was, something like it was a pretty nuts game on their end. So yeah, he ended up with 32 for 54, 389 yards, 4 touchdowns, 3 interceptions for a passer rating of 83.
Yeah, and Minnesota was ahead 28-0 in that game.
Yeah.
So, Minnesota has been a fun team so far too, but I don't think any of these teams are like head and shoulders above Chicago. I think they're all going to have issues that will arise down the stretch in different ways, just like we will. I think splitting with Minnesota and Detroit is very reasonable. We'll see about Green Bay and how that shakes out. But I mean, Green Bay is going to be our first big test coming out of this stretch of 5 games I listed, and then we finally start getting into the divisional games, and we got Green Bay on like mid-November, November 17th after New England, and then we get Green Bay, Minnesota, Detroit 3 weeks in a row. I mean, that's going to tell a lot about this team there. So I just really hope we've built some momentum over these next 5 before we hit those 3.
Man, the schedule makers are cruel, but or they're nice because at least you're getting some of these easier ones to bolster you up. Ryan, thank you so much for joining me today. Tell everyone, if they're not already, where they can follow you, where they can find you, and where they can find all your awesome work.
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter, on Instagram, Threads. It's at Ryan Droste. That's Droste. You can find my writing over at Windy City Gridiron. I do the Game Balls column every Monday afternoon, so I'll be getting that ready tonight. That will publish tomorrow. You guys check that out on the website. I do some of the injury updates on the website on Wednesdays as well. I host, like I said, Bears Over Beers kind of every other week. We got 4 guys that are kind of rotating in that host chair this year, and I just hosted it this past Wednesday. I'll be on it again next week, but make sure you check it out because it's always a fun time. We crack open some beers, we talk Bears football. It's a very loose show, a lot of interaction with the chat room. Wednesday nights at 8 o'clock Central. And then also I host a podcast called Top Rope Nation. So if you are a wrestling fan at all, I've been doing that show since 2016. If you're watching our video stream right here, you see a mix of Chicago Bears and wrestling paraphernalia behind me. And that's why this is my my little podcast studio. So if you like wrestling, check out Top Rope Nation. And then, yeah, of course, all the stuff here at Second City Gridiron and over on the website at Windy City Gridiron.
I love it. What a cool mix that you have going on there. All right, everyone, enjoy the win. Enjoy the rest of the weekend you have remaining, and bear down.